Okay, so for those of you who don't know us, I'm Natalie
And I'm Jessica.
and we're from On Total Wellness. So we believe in a holistic um, modality in order to keeping the horses in our lives, and having a track system is a key component to being able to offer our horses that lifestyle. And so what we wanted to do with this webinar is just spread the word about the benefits of track systems and how helpful they can be to your horses.
Mhm. I myself am a hoof care provider, and I've been doing hoofs for 12-ish years now. And Natalie is a body worker and does all of our nutritional consultations for our horses within the clients and also animal
Yeah,
communication.
a lot of energy work. So a lot of the
Mhm.
work that I do is very energy based. And so that seems to tie in and pair really well with the horses.
Mhm.
So I'm going to bring up, we have a slide presentation for you today. So we're going to bring that up. So from paddock to paradise. So let's start off with what a track system is. So a track system is a lifestyle created for horses using a continuous path or a track to encourage movement with several stations. The layouts are endless. The purpose of this lifestyle is designed to more closely mimic the horse's natural environment by fulfilling instinctual needs for movement, variety, and stimulation for the horse. Track systems are also known as paddock paradise. And what we're focusing on today are track systems. Equicentral living is a little bit different than track systems. So we just want to make sure that it's really clear that we are talking about track systems today.
Did you know more horses are living on track systems every year? And that's going to help a lot of horses get stronger, more resilient, and perform at their best. And we've got some great case studies to share with you guys this evening of some of those horses who have rehabbed in track systems and improved their welfare and their lives pretty quickly.
So track systems are a lifestyle closer to nature. So Jessica and I refer to it as from paddock to paradise, which was our inspiration for our online course. So it focuses on herd dynamics and it helps to increase healthy movement within the herd and within the horse. It's freedom to forage so that the horses can move around and find different stations for hay and mimic that foraging behavior. There's terrain change and varied footing within the track systems. It helps to flow with the natural seasons. And so they end up really engaging and being familiar with the change of season. And it helps to limit the toxins, especially when you are cleaning your paddocks and removing that manure from the paddocks and from the track system. It really helps to keep the parasites under control. The horses are able to interact more harmoniously because they are living in an environment that more closely fulfills their needs.
And that's a big one because with the amount of clients that you and I interact with, a lot of stories we hear about frequently are how some horses just don't get along with others. And so what we see repeatedly is horses who have either had fractious tendencies or they're not able to get along with a herd environment tend to have a very smooth transition into a track system lifestyle where they're able to gain space. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that and expand on that as well. So, some of the benefits, and we see a longer list than this, but for tonight, for an introduction, some of the benefits for the mind, body, and hooves become very clear and oftentimes quickly when you introduce a track system. It's quite short. So, for the mind, it encourages living in a track system, encourages movement without pressure from human interaction. So, it's wonderful that we can go out to the paddock, get our horses, and do training, riding, playing with them, whatever your preference is. But the wonderful thing about a track is that the horse is getting movement without the pressure of a human causing it all of the time. And that's really nice for them as well. Okay, so as I was mentioning, there's no pressure on the horse. So it's a wonderful way for them to get more exercise without human interaction at the same time. The dynamics in a herd influence the function and the use of the track. So the amount of horses that you have in the herd is going to either encourage it's going to encourage more movement when they have each other to go with somewhere. This creates organic movement and shifts within the herd. The track lifestyle allows for horses to find their own space of comfort by creating more discrete sight lines when needed. So if you have horses who are a little lower in the pecking order, they're able to find distance between themselves and horses who are higher in the pecking order. And this really decreases stress in those lower pecking order horses. And it also takes some of the pressure off the higher horses because they are able to find space, claim themselves a forage source, one of our feeders, and the other ones can move on. So it creates a ton of movement. In the body, horses are continually moving and therefore they're less prone to becoming stiff or overexerting themselves, which puts them at risk for injury or tie up. It's beneficial for horses of all ages. We've got horses in the track systems that are babies, and we have Natalie's eldest is in her late 30s.
Yeah, and everything in between.
And everything in between. And they've been thriving for many, many years that way. We're into 15 years now. We've been doing track systems for 15 years. And we've been able to watch horses grow, mature, and go right into their senior years in a happy, healthy way. So living in the track gives them the movement that supports their healthy connective tissue, their joints, and their bones. Movement improves all of their wellness throughout their body. Specific to the hooves, which is the part that I'm a little bit geeky about because of my farrier side, is that the hoof mechanisms are strongest when the horse can move comfortably. And when they're moving comfortably and their feet feel good, they're going to move more. So the track system encourages that movement, which stimulates the hoof, blood circulation, and the varied terrain really helps with that as well. We've got boots in that side note there because when we bring horses in and they begin their journey on tracks, we typically will start them in boots if they're sore-footed so that they feel comfortable enough to move and to keep up with the herd on the track.
So here's some benefits to putting in a track system, because people might say, like, why should I put in a track system? What are the benefits for my horse? So increased healthy natural movement, freedom to forage, healthier herd dynamics. Again, Jessica was talking about taking that pressure off of the higher in the herd and the lower in the herd. You can kind of get around different sight lines and that sort of thing to really help the dynamic that way. It reduces or eliminates vices that they might have in other living situations. It certainly reduces boredom and anxiety because there's a lot of things that they can do. It enhances digestion because all that natural movement that's going on. It supports weight management. So whether you have a horse that's overweight or you have a horse that's underweight, it really helps for them to balance out within their weight and develop some good muscling. It improves metabolic health. It helps to create a stronger musculoskeletal system. It helps hoof health. You can do different terrains as options. Having one terrain is certainly fine if that's what's in your capacity, and then adding some different terrains is certainly helpful and beneficial as well. If you have a horse that's in need of rehabilitation, it's helpful for that as well, but it also supports horses often in a way you don't necessarily realize until you start seeing the benefits. And again, we talk about those limiting toxicities within the closed environment. So here's some basic stations. So when you're first getting started, it's really easy to jump on some Facebook groups and do some Google searching and get really overwhelmed by the amazing possibilities of track systems. But what we really encourage you to do is just get started. So just start with a basic station. So that would be having multiple hay stations, having your water station, having a resting, rolling, and play area, having some shelter, and then you can always add some enrichment right away, or you can add enrichment and exploration as you go. You can always add more enhancing stations later. Stick with the most basic when getting started. It's more important that you create the track that is within your capacity to maintain and upkeep, because if you, let's say, bite off too much or too big of a track system, and it's hard to sort of keep it all the way you had intended and anticipated, it could be really easy to just sort of shut it down and go back to the old way. So we really encourage you, keep it simple, just starting with a basic track is better than not having a track at all. Knowing your land is really helpful in choosing the location. So we always say, keep an eye on wet spots, keep an eye on where maybe it's extra windy, or maybe there's water that pools, or maybe there's a snowdrift that gathers. Keep an eye on that, and take those as your land considerations when you're planning your track system, because the less you're fighting Mother Nature, the more successful your track is going to be.
Thank you.
Okay.
So now we're going to talk a little more in detail about those stations that Natalie was mentioning. So the first one is your hay stations. This is what separates a track system lifestyle from other lifestyles that we see across the board in Ontario, at least. Oftentimes we're used to seeing one single hay source for the horses, regardless of whether they're on pasture or not. And so the key with the track system is to set up and establish hay stations around the track so that you can encourage the horses to go look for what has been served to them. We use 1.5-inch slow feed hay nets across our facility. So you can see the little dark bay munching at a hay net there. But horses travel between these stations and it mimics their natural foraging behavior. You can mix and match hay even. We've done that to encourage horses to go look for things. So there's ways to encourage movement with the positioning and what you put in your hay nets. There's many styles of hay stations. They can be purchased ready to use or made DIY. Natalie has a fantastic skill with her DIY making of her slow feeders, but we do have for you, everybody tonight, we have a coupon available for optimizer feeders. They're a Canadian brand and we have a paddock style one. So that's in the picture there. It's the large one with the horse hanging his head in eating. And we also have a smaller style or the stall size, and the purple, which we'll bring up at the end of this webinar, is the coupon code that you can use when you order. We also have nag bags sponsoring the course, and nag bags purple code is aside as well. And they have a great ready to use drop down frame feeder so that you can hang it off of shelter walls, paddock fencing, that sort of thing, so that they're easy to use and you don't have to spend so much time stuffing this.
Right. Yeah, definitely. They're really handy there. And certainly if you're looking for something that's ready to go, just purchase it. It'll get shipped to your house and you just start using it right away. Both of those companies have really great options. And even though the one is technically called an install feeder, you can install it outside and it works as a small little snack station along the way. So they're both great companies to work with. And then otherwise you can get creative and make something.
Like you do.
Yeah, true. Okay, so water stations. So horses drop in for a drink and then they usually move on. This depends on the location. This naturally it creates herd interaction and a steady flow on the track. You'll notice you'll have different groupings of horses that sort of travel to the water together, and then they'll often run back or run to a new feeder. So it's really fun to watch. The water station is the main station that needs to be the easiest one for you. So especially here where we get a really cold winter, we need to think about filling that trough in the winter, heating that trough all winter. So we do have to keep it close to an electrical supply, keep it close to a water hydrant, that sort of thing. So we sort of say, put your water station where it's convenient and easy for you, and then spread those other stations around to get some extra distance happening.
Okay, the resting, rolling, or playing space. So a lot of people will ask us questions, which, by the way, if you do have questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to write them down in the chat.
Yes.
Because Natalie and I are going to do a recording of a Q&A about track systems.
Yeah.
So if you have questions, shoot them our way and we'd be happy to answer them.
Yeah, we may have a chance to answer a couple questions at the end of today, but certainly we want to get to all of your questions. So if we don't get them today, because of course people do get tired. And so just feel free to put them in there and we'll make sure we get you some answers.
Great. Awesome. Yeah, so we do get the question frequently about the width of the track and what's considered safe. So this is where it's essential to have in a track system an open space where the horses can lay down, have a roll, run and romp, have a play. You can see this whole herd is laying down, having a nap together in an open space. Horses are smart. They feel the encouragement of the size, the width of the track encourages horses to move where it's narrower. And that's the design of it. The encouragement of movement comes from how narrow the track becomes. Horses don't choose to spend a lot of time standing around where it's narrow. So that's what gets them moving. But then if they have a broad open area within the track, or 2 or 3 open areas, depending on what you prefer and the size of your herd, those are the spaces where the horses will unwind, lay down, take their naps, have a roll. It gives the horses plenty of space to relax and play. It's good
Yeah.
for them.
Yeah, you have to provide that space because they do need somewhere to really roll or have a little play area. Otherwise, they end up maybe rolling in an area that's less than ideal. So you do have to provide those spaces for them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, shelter station. So shelters come in different forms. Shelters on the track often protect from the sun, the wind, the rain, and insects. It allows horses to rest comfortably while remaining outdoors and at their own discretion. So they can choose when they want to go and use a shelter. They can choose whether they want the side of a shelter, inside a run-in shed, or just under an overhang. So it's really nice when you allow the horses to choose. Natural man-made shelters support natural herd flow, reduces competition, and ensures every horse has access to safe, dry, and comfortable resting space of their own choice. Jessica and I are huge advocates of not putting hay in your shelters because then you can start to see some guarding behaviors and you can start to see horses maybe not being let into the shelter and that sort of thing. So we do like to keep our hay stations separate from our shelter stations. We do have some shelters that are nearby, but not within a range where a horse would feel the need to protect or hoard both stations.
Enrichment. So this is essentially the icing on the cake with track systems and creating more of a paradise when it comes to a paddock paradise. So enrichment through activities and features along the track keep horses feeling mentally stimulated, and it's also very socially engaging and organically creates more activity throughout the day for the horses. So these are icing on the cake because they're optional and not out of necessity. And there are a lot of successful tracks that are keeping horses moving without a lot of it. But what Natalie and I have found over the years is that the more things there are for the horses to do, the more satisfied they are. And when they're feeling satisfied and fulfilled, they're a lot more peaceful, quiet, relaxed, and happy to come and do the work with us as well. So adding a variety of sensory objects, natural obstacles, toys, or environmental textures create a dynamic and engaging environment that enhances emotional well-being and reduces their boredom. You can always add. So when you're first starting off with a track, this is where it can get a little overwhelming, as Natalie mentioned earlier. People look at it and go, that's way too much work.
Yeah.
So pick and choose things that are simple. Throwing a couple of pieces of apple into a hay ball is a lot easier than some of the very intricate toys that people have created for
Yeah.
horses as well. But it's just getting them to interact with their environment so that they're not feeling the boredom of living in a square.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, like with the track system, you get them out of that square. And so there's already a lot more exploration and enrichment just by getting them out of that square. And then, like Jess said, this is the icing on the cake. And you might find one of your horses likes the hay ball and someone else likes a hay net that's hung from a tree. And so we do try to spend some time to really see which horse likes which enhancements and offer them things in that manner. So we're going to do some case studies here. We've got 4 different case studies for you. The first one's a laminitis case. The second one is a founder case. The third one is a navicular and an injury recovery. And the fourth one is just an overall wellness. What started out as what was supposed to be a case study turned into a whole herd of greatly improved wellness. So just a quick note, Jessica and I are huge advocates of the whole horse approach. So we always feel that a team approach is the best approach to take with horses. So keep in mind during these case studies, we're going to share some of the information that went into these case studies, but there's a lot of behind the scenes that go with these case studies with nutritional programs and different protocols and that sort of thing too. So we just kept it very basic, yeah, for the efficiency of the class here. So here we go. So case study 1. So this guy had several bouts of laminitis. He had chronically unhealthy feet. He had a lot of fat pads distributed all over his body. He had a very large crusty neck. You can see it in the picture there. And he was just overall feeling very shut down. He was on weighted hay. The hay was in half-inch hay nets, and everything was weighted. So his owner was very on top of his program and his protocols that she was instructed to do. So she had netted, tested hay, and she would offer him in the specific weighted amounts at the specific times. And so she was very diligent owner in looking after his care. He did have some dry lot within his paddock, and then there was a section of the paddock itself that had some overgrazed and stress grass in it. So his new program, this is the pictures here are showing him after 13 months on his new program. So he was turned out 24/7 just as he was at in the paddock situation. So he was still out 24/7. He was on just under half an acre track in a herd of 4. There was no pasture access for him because it wasn't safe for him. The tracks were harrowed as needed. And what we mean by that is when you have the balanced ratio of horse to track, the track itself the root system becomes disrupted, and that soil holds really nicely without allowing the grass to grow. Every once in a while, if we end up with a lot of rain or the weather changes and that sort of thing, sometimes you do have to harrow your tracks. But when you have that balance of horse to track size, then there is less need for harrowing. Um, he had continual access to 5 different hay stations with tested low NSC hay, and he's eating from 1.25 to 1.5 inch nets. And there was no change to his fitness program. It was the exact same from when he was at his previous in his previous paddock location to in the track system. So the results for him were the neck crest greatly decreased, the I can't speak, sorry. The metabolic fat pads were resolved. He has healthier hoof structures. He has not had any reoccurring laminitis, and he's a happy horse and he's got a happy owner. So he's a pretty handsome guy living with some ladies.
Can I just add too that he's a
Sure.
Pasifino?
Oh, he's Pasfino.
And he's not a spring chicken anymore.
That's right. He's a
So
senior.
a lot of people who have these horses with EMS and metabolic conditions, they see these fat pads start and it's like, oh, I think there's a lot of awareness now of it's not a good thing to have happening, but it's very difficult to get these in check sometimes.
For sure.
And so with continual conversations with his owner, we were all pretty like we're sharing the excitement and the thrill of watching him lose weight, and he ended up like a lean little machine.
Yeah.
And he was able to eat all the time, which made him so happy.
Yeah, and his owner is super hands-on, and she would constantly do weigh-ins with him, and she had a whole spreadsheet made, and she was really tracking his progress. And so when he started making some really big successful changes, it was pretty exciting for all of us. Okay, so case study 2. This is a little pony in his late teens, and he was completely foundered. So he had had several bouts of laminitis. He had a lot of bone remodeling happening. He was chronically painful. He had an extreme foundered stance and often didn't want to walk. He was diagnosed with PPID, and he had a lot of muscle wasting. So his previous program, he was at a boarding facility where it was hard to manage the hay source, and this is something that we run into often, where the owner of the barn maybe purchases hay from different sources, and that sometimes that's just the reality of having horses and getting hay from different places, and so we're realistic there, and so that was his situation. He was in a dry lot because he was in a lot of pine trees, and so the grass just didn't grow there because of the acidity in the needles, the pine needles. And there were several years of trying different forms of management for him, so different shoeing packages and all sorts of different things. He had had a lot of protocols thrown at him before he experienced the track lifestyle, and he really started to come around with the track. So he was on his new program for about 18 months when he really was absolutely thriving. Turnout 24/7. He was on half an acre in a herd of 4. He had no pasture access. The tracks
Although,
again were hard as needed. I know his mommy would sometimes let him sneak a few nibbles. Sometimes it's hard as an owner because you know that they love the grass so much. So,
yeah.
so he did get a few little
Yeah,
sneaky
pony brain.
nibbles.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he would
pony
sneak some
brain.
along the fence line
Yeah,
too,
true, true.
but it was good for him.
So, so he had continual access to 4 hay stations with tested low NSC hay in 1.5 inch nets. He did have quite a good fitness program as his comfort increased. Like the owner of this pony would take this pony for very, very long walks. They'd be gone for hours once he got comfortable, and that, of course, really helps. He had laser therapy treatments at least 3 times a week. He had hoof boots as needed. And again, it was a whole team approach. So the results for him were healthier hoof structures. So even though his hoof maybe didn't look picture perfect because he did have bone changes, for him, he was extremely sound and extremely comfortable. And so that's what we were going for there. The laminitis flare-ups decreased in severity and then they resolved. He didn't have any more of those. His personality came back to being the herd leader, so small and mighty. He was definitely the ruler of the herd, and he happily joins trail rides, being ponied by a little girl now. So there you can see the little girl riding him there, and he's being ponied off of another horse. And you can just see in that bottom picture there what a great big personality that he's showing. And you can also see that he's not living on a dry lot now. He's actually back on a bit of pasture, but she's really adamant with that fitness program. And so we just put in here, hopefully it works. We put in like this cute little video of him. So he's the little one at the back in the blanket. So you can see this is 6 months into rehab, and he's just absolutely keeping up with his buddies and having a great time. These boys would often take off on little running spurts and just have a party.
And in the beginning, he would walk and sort of hope that they would wait up for him at some point at the end of
Yeah.
the track. But it was a wonderful progress report to see him choosing to go for a gallop with them.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. He was quite happy.
Great.
Okay.
Okay, case study 3, we've got navicular. And with this horse specifically, he had confirmed with radiographs, navicular bone remodeling, and some damage to the bursa with the degree of, whoa.
I'm not sure what's all over the screen, you guys.
We'll maybe just carry on.
That's okay.
We'll ignore that. We'll say a kid did it. We have a few. So he had navicular bone remodeling, and that's something that's permanent. So that's the difference between your navicular syndrome versus disease, right? So he had chronically painful feet, and he has a very dedicated owner who wanted to see it through for him and make his feet more comfortable. So she was willing to listen to the vet and farrier and make sure that they did the best that they could with their shoeing packages for him. So in the bottom photo, you can see a therapeutic shoeing package that he arrived in. But what he was battling and dealing with was some really deep-rooted thrush up deep in his frogs. So painful feet. And then because he had chronically sore feet, he was also dealing with whole body soreness and compensation. So with the whole body soreness, that's probably a big part of why he was feeling pretty grumpy as well. He wasn't a super stoked horse about what he was doing on a day-to-day basis because he just didn't feel good in his body to move. He also had an extremely swollen sheath, and that is a sign and symptom of some hormone imbalances that are going on, metabolism issues. And so when he entered the track system for rehab, it was a slow go to begin with, right? We wanted to make sure that we were setting him up for a success so that he would be comfortable. His previous program on a basic level, he lived in a field. It's a field that's permanent for them. So the grass ends up stressed because the horses are grazing it full time. And there was one single hay source, and it's the round bill, and that was unnetted. Unnetted hay. So it was free access to that. And then attempting a fitness program as a resolution. So his owner had a coach, he had support, and they were hoping that getting some weight off of him and encouraging him to move more would help to get his joints lubricated and get him feel better. But we were really dealing with a more serious hoof rehab needed for this guy.
Yeah.
Okay, so new program. He started off in a small turnout space. So we did not do a stall rest for him. I will add that
Yeah.
additionally to his navicular, he did have a DDFT, a deep digital flexor tendon injury as well. So when he arrived, we removed the shoes, put him in a small turnout. He had access to a comfort stall, like the soft flooring in a stall, when his shoes were removed, and we went to booting him right away so that we could protect and support him.
He was actually so sore that he was in a shoeing package in boots.
Yes.
So yes, you definitely booted him when you pulled the
Hard,
shoes.
yeah, hard to get him comfortable on day one. So we give horses access to still have the freedom to choose and to move. So he had a wonderful stall that he could go into, but he could come out when he wanted to as well. And it's really surprising to a lot of people how much movement horses will choose when they have the ability to. So we worked towards turnout on a half-acre track in a herd of 4. And this guy had no access to pasture during rehab because navicular is very easily set off with inflammation. Thank you. With inflammation. And so with the variabilities in the sugar content in grass, we just know that it's safer and easier to rehab him knowing what's in his mouth, what's going in consistently. So he had continual access to 4 hay stations with tested low NSC hay in 1.5-inch nets. I think everybody's going to start sensing a routine here.
Yeah, so we're like firm believers of tested hay.
Yeah.
There are definitely some nutritionists out there that don't feel it's as essential to really test that hay and that you should focus more on the fitness. But Jessica and I are big advocates of testing our hay.
It's a helpful tool to know what you're dealing with, right?
It is, yeah.
Yeah. So his fitness was increased with improved comfort to daily, and we worked up from hand walking, and then he went back to riding. He received laser therapy treatments. So that was to help with blood circulation and healing of the connective tissues within the tendon injury. And the results were improved hoof balance and function, was able to eventually get him barefoot. So in the photo above the before and after of the hooves, he's in glue-on composite shoes, and that was a step along his journey was for him to be in the composites while he was getting back into work to make sure that he was being protected and had good shock absorption. And then he went from booted therapy to glue-ons, and then he went to barefoot eventually. He has improved greatly in his soundness throughout his body, and the DDFT injury recovered, and he's back to being happily ridden. So really great recovery for this guy, and it just takes time. So you can see in the before and after of the hoof image, a lot of what was achieved was developing depth and healthy structures that would support the connective tissues within the hoof. So yeah.
Oftentimes, like when horses are so far out of balance within their body, it takes a lot longer for them to come back than people expect. So what you notice probably is that these extreme rehab cases that we're talking about with the success with the track system is it wasn't overnight. It did take time for them to turn around. But in the end, you end up with a horse who feels much better and is able to return to their previous career that they were doing before.
That red line's going to follow us through the rest of this.
It's okay.
Okay, great. Case study 4. This one was really fun. It was a great surprise for the owners, but Natalie and I weren't surprised in the least.
Yeah, it's true.
About overall wellness. So this is a case of whole herd improvements. So initially, when Natalie was consulted on putting up a track.
Can I say something?
Yeah, do it.
So this specific location is owned obviously by a farm owner, and it's actually a boarder that really fell in love with the track system. And so they made an agreement with the barn owner to put in this track system in the paddock because they have 4 horses within this paddock. And so they said, okay, because our horses are the only ones in this paddock, can we put a track system in for them? And so the barn owner agreed. And so there you go.
Yeah.
So and there's a boarder who got a track system in at the barn.
And that's spreading now. That word's spreading.
Right.
So what we were looking at in several of the horses, in the herd of 4, we're showing 3 of them. There were some chronic hoof cracks all the way up to the hairline and very weak contracted feet. One of the horses is highly sensitive, a little bit reactive, but he's very, very sweet. So some of the concern can be that he's not really good at adjusting to new unknowns in his world. There was some minor shoulder imbalances and uneven muscle toning in the top lines of the horses, and this was confirmed by their saddle fitter. And the initial reason for the track system and the hope for the owners was to help their Mini get back on track, because you can see the upper hoof images of the Mini, and she was dealing with some pretty serious laminitis, and it was very challenging to get under control living with too much grass.
Yeah.
So they had the Mini living in a very small dry lot pen within the paddock, but they wanted better for her.
Yeah, it was probably like 30 feet by 30 feet. It was a square, essentially a square with that they put up with electric fencing,
Mm-hmm.
so that she couldn't get out and then basically cause more damage to herself. But they really knew that she was best with her herd.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why they knew that the track system would be the right choice for her. And then it ended up helping all of them.
Yeah. And these are horses who, as noted here in the previous program, they're all in regular work. They're loved on and worked with on a 5 day a week basis. They have very attentive owners. And so these issues that we were seeing in the rest of the herd were fairly minor, because they were in working condition. And so their previous program included a netted single hay source. So it was a round bale. And the round bale was located where we see a lot of round bales typically located, which is near the gate of the paddock. The life is busy, and at boarding barns, there's a lot to do, and the list is long. And so putting the round bale close to the gate is typically the easiest way to get it done.
Yeah.
This does mean that, and I'm sure you're seeing it at this time of year, that the horses go where the food is. And so these horses wouldn't put footprints outside, even though they had
It was like
three and a half acres
Yeah.
to use in the winter months. So that's quite a bit of the year that they weren't moving enough. It was a herd of 4. So that's the basics of it. They all had their nutritional programs, coach, body workers.
And then like several of them are ridden quite a bit.
Yeah. Oh yeah, all of them get the attention. So this is the progress report 11 months in. So we weren't even a year into the track being in place. I remembered getting a really excited text message from one of the owners about 3 weeks after they got onto the track, and he said he could see the feet opening up in a positive way and decontracting. So it's just incredible to see when the horses have the potential to move, how much healing can go on. And so they remained in the current 3.5 acre paddock that was converted to a track with their current herd mates. So no big changes there, just a change of living environment within that paddock. There were 4 slow feed hay stations installed with 1.5-inch nets. Plus, that existing round bale that's netted was placed at the farthest side of the track.
We're going to show you.
Yeah. So if they wanted to go camp out and have a picnic, they'd have to go get it.
Yeah.
The tracks were harrowed frequently because the pasture was quite rich in that paddock. The owners of the facility of the boarding barn had recently done some reseeding, and they wanted to produce healthy pasture. So that was a conversation that was had in getting started with the track and being able to set it up so that there was a dry track without grass for the Mini, which also ended up benefiting all of them. And then you'll see an aerial view of how we set up the pastures so that they were able to have rotational pasture too for healthy grass.
Yeah.
So their fitness and training remained the exact same, and they had access daily to, as I just mentioned, the inner pastures for the horses who could handle the grass and who benefited from it. So the pasture was split in half so that they had continual access to pasture that's not overgrazed.
Right.
When one grass pasture started to look a little bit grazed down, they would switch the horses to the other side, give it a rest. And this was their first season doing it, and they did amazing.
And this is all within one track system.
One track system.
Didn't have to leave.
And first season.
Yep.
For the owners. Yes, it was wonderful. So the results. The hoof health greatly improved in all 4 horses, which was incredible to see because their farrier and hoof care did not change. Their diets, for the most part, did not change, and their exercise programs did not change. Just the track system and the movement was the biggest change. There was a healthy amount of weight loss. So there was some obesity going on in the paddock. You can see the little white pony. If we go back up.
There she is at the top there.
Yeah, so she was covered in fat pads and easy keeper type horse. And then you can see these other 2 hoof images of just less than optimal in health feet. And then the Mini has a lot of new, healthy, well-connected growth in that image. And then the other guy down below has a much more dense foot, stronger, healthier, more balanced foot after being on the track and moving more. So their hoof health greatly improved, measurably. Oh, yes. There was a measurably even and increased muscle tone confirmed by the saddle fitter. She was pleasantly surprised. And we talked a little bit about the track system and the benefits of it because she had seen such an improvement with saddle fit and how even the horses were through their top lines. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then the fourth horse in the herd, who is a little bit easily stressed and more sensitive, he transitioned really, really well to the track system. He was able to stay with his herd, move with the herd, and he settled into the different setup very, very well.
Yeah.
They were really happy with that.
Okay, so let's check out some tracks. So you can always add on to an existing track. We definitely have. So you can either add on, you can build another one. Some people like one really big track. Some people like smaller separated tracks so that they can have sort of herd dynamics that mesh with what they feel is best. Work with the land and what you have available to you. So we talked a little bit about that before, where you really get to know your land and work with it there. So in this picture here, this track here has a loop that goes a course around, and then also they have access into these trees for natural shelter and some nice, cool, shady area. And when the sun comes up in the morning, it does give them access here through these trees, as well as up here. So taking into consideration the sunlight hours that the herds are getting as well is really important. This one down here, you can see that this is an extension onto an existing established track. And so this is actually, it's still grass here. Oh, I've lost my mouse. It's still grass here. And so eventually with some foot pattern and some harrowing, this did end up turning into a dry track section as well. But again, we didn't fight it. We just let the horses who could have pasture eat it down. And then once it was down far enough, we got equipment in there and finished it off with the equipment. So again, work with your land, work with what you have. Don't fight Mother Nature, and that'll make you even more successful. The reason we are showing this, it's the same tracks here, but in this picture here, we're showing that these two tracks, even though they're usually separate, they can actually connect. So that's another option too. If you've got separate tracks, you can always connect them when it's fitting and then separate them again. But you can see this track has a nice running, playing, rolling area. This track over here has a nice running, playing, rolling, resting area. And so there's a lot of options there for the horses to be able to move around and wander.
You can also see in this image how clear it is that there is pasture.
Right.
So having horses and having a track system doesn't mean that your horses have to be deprived of having access to pasture.
Right.
That's one of the big questions we get.
Sure.
So the key here is that our horses are on the pasture during specific hours of the day. And we're able to rotate the pastures so that they have access to mature, healthy grass that's not in a stress state in recovering, which puts it into a high sugar state. And so you can see on the interior of these tracks that there is a pasture. And then on the far side of the treed one that Natalie was mentioning, there's a pasture in the center, but there's also an additional large pasture beside it that's gated. So they have access to go to it when we feel that it's good for them to have it. And it means that we can keep the horses who can't have grass, like some of the case studies we just showed you. It means that they're not left behind so much. When their herd mates head off to pasture, they can wander along the track and set themselves up at a hay station that's nearby where their herd mates are grazing. And Natalie and I have seen this. It's such a seamless adjustment. Yeah, it's such a seamless adjustment instead of taking a horse from a pen and putting them out to pasture and their herd mates can't get near them again, which causes and increases a bit of stress. So this is a great way to give the horses pasture who could use it.
Right.
And help out that way.
Right. And keep friends close for those who can't. Okay, so this is the one that unfortunately Google Satellite is not quite updated yet with the layout for us, but we'll keep track there. So this is the one we were talking about that had the 4 horses. It had the mini. So the mini was living in a little section right here. Again, it was like 30 feet by 30 feet. And so what ended up happening was they had a run-in shed here right where the logo is there. And So the horses, you can see, have to go all the way around and then down the diagonal to get to the run and shed. Now, where it's yellow is it closed off. So it's often at this point now kept closed. But when it was originally built, these yellow lines that represent closure were not there. So the horses could have access to the shelter and they could come back and forth. They could go all around. Once the horses got the flow of the track, those sections got closed off and then they were encouraged and gently forced to have to be able to walk all the way around, go to the running shed, and then come back out and then continue on to those hay stations. So the round bell used to be right up here at the front, and now the round bell is all the way back in this back corner. So for simplicity's sake, the tractor, when it goes in, they can open up those yellow lines and drive diagonally all the way straight through to that round bell instead of having to go all the way around. And then they just close it back up when they leave. So it makes it really easy to get your round bell out there, and then encourage the horses to keep moving.
Mhm. Okay, so this is a fun one. This is a treed track that Natalie and I consulted with and helped build nearly 10, I think it's about 10 years ago now. It's been a long time. So this is a herd of 8 who's been living on this track for about 10 years now. We've got within this track, you can actually see if you look closely that the herd mates are all on the pasture at that time, the ones that can have grass during the picture. But we have an off the track thoroughbred, a gypsy vanner, a Hanoverian, couple of Rocky Mountain horses, donkeys, and miniature horses. So it's a really fun herd to watch and to see how they interact with one another. It's also a herd that may not get along very well if they were stuck in close quarters, but they have so much fun and they're well balanced with each other. So with the tree track, we've got the barn and arena easily accessible. The water source is right up next to the barn. It's simple. But what we wanted to show you is that your track does not need to be, there's no cookie cutter. It can be any shape that works for your facility.
With the land.
With the land, exactly. And so there was a really nice chunk of trees down near the bottom of this picture that was quite clean and healthy. And we delimbed the bottom sections of the trees so that they would be safe to travel through. The horses love spending time in those trees during the summer months as well as the winter. They forage through there. And then you can see that on either side of the pasture, there are more narrow chutes, wide enough for a tractor and a little Kubota RTV to get through with hay and to clean. But those are the movement sections of the track that sort of funnel the horses along to the back. At the back, there is a round bale feeder. And then throughout the track, there are slow feed stations. And those slow feed stations in this particular track move frequently because these ladies like to keep it interesting for their horses. So their slow feed stations change almost on the daily in location, and it's really engaging for the horses who are living there. Mm-hmm. There's also on the other side of the arena where there's some colored fall going on in the trees, there is a fence line now that separates that section. If they have a horse or some ponies that they want to spend some time with the grandkids and they don't want to have everybody with them and they want to be outside, they just pull that electric handle across and it's good to go. And it's a very usable space for them that's flexible.
Yeah, I think it's also important to note that the original intention of the inside, although they did end up having horses eat the pasture here, they wanted to keep that section for hay.
Yeah.
And so oftentimes you're building track systems around a hay field or incorporating some of that. So it's endless options. It really depends on what your needs are to make it work for you and your horses.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so here's a cool one because this track system was built into very boring rectangular paddocks. And so these rectangular paddocks were separate. They were grass fields. And so what ended up happening was the blue circle is where the water trough is. And they have 2 row barns that they had delivered here. So 6 stalls in total, but the center of both of those row barns have double doors. So they are a run-in shed. So they double there as a run-in shed as well. And this specific individual did some therapy work. So she wanted some different areas to be able to take a horse or two, do some therapy work, and then allow them back onto the track. So this middle section here is a pasture, rotational pasture, as well as this longer section here. So that she had 2 rotational pastures. her horses weren't able to have a lot of time. They had about 5-10 minutes of grazing a day. So for her, those pastures were substantial enough for her. At the back here is where her round pen is, where she would do some of those therapy sessions. And she liked that it was sort of tucked off at the end because it was a quite busy facility. And so at the end, at the back side, it was quieter. And so she really enjoyed doing the sessions there in the round pen. Where this specific farm is located, they get a ton of snow. And so this pink line here represents a gate that opens and closes. And so usually that gate is in the position it's in now, which is the closed position. And so you can see it forces the horses to go all the way around to get back to that round bale. And then they have to go all the way back around to get to the water. Now, if they get a ton of snow, they can just, or there's a lot of ice, they can just open up that gate and the horses have a shorter distance to get back and forth to the round bale. But for the most part, that gate is kept closed. The other nice thing is that green diagonal line, which is opposite the water trough, sort of closer to that building on the exterior side there, is a gate. And so they just sneak in there with the round bale. They pop that new round bale in. The tractor is not going any farther than it was originally to put a round bale in, but now the horses are going so much farther. The other thing to note here is that this little rectangle on the long side of this one specific paddock, it was quite wet and swampy. And so instead of having the track go all around the outside perimeter of that paddock that was already set up, we offset, I think it was about 25 feet, we offset that line so that the horses were out of that wet area and it just does its own thing. It just goes wild and does its own thing. And every once in a while, if the grass gets too close to the wires, they'll just whippersnip around to clear it back down. But essentially, no one goes in there. We did put handles on it just so that there could be access in and out. But for the most part, the horses don't go in there. And you can see how big this track is because there's two little specks. There's a little brown speck and a little white speck on the long side near the bottom, little horses there. So this is quite a large track. So they do require a lot of harrowing to keep this track looking as it is. But they have no problem doing that because that's within their capacity to do so. And it means a better life for the horses. So they really keep up with it there.
Mm-hmm.
So here's just a little fun collage of some horses on the track in action. You've got some inner pasture in action here with some horses. You can see down here, some are running off of the pasture. There was a large grouping of horses. It looks like there was 5 or 6 horses on the pasture at that time. And then there again, you've got your resting area up in the top corner here. We've had some really cold nights. And so putting out a few sections of loose hay, like throwing some flakes, helps to really keep that furnace going and give it sort of a kickstart. I always say if you're going to put out loose hay, put out more piles than you do have horses so that even within the loose hay, they're still maneuvering around and no one is feeling that they need to guard those piles. Is there anything you want to add about the picture?
I just want to add how cool it looks in the bottom left corner.
Oh, yeah.
And how when you have horses who can handle grass, this is one of the sections of track within that tree track that we showed.
Right.
So you can see that the horses have produced their own tracks within an open space in the forest. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of neat because there's 3 or 4 different tracks that all join together into a wide one and they just find their way and their life is just they love it. They get to go and check things out and see what grew when they weren't there for the last 3 days. So
that's right.
Yeah, lots of really good, healthy herd interactions with this environment.
Yeah, and you were mentioning too before about horses sometimes on a track system. When you have a really big track system, the horses get quite far, and so teaching your horses a call to get them to come to you is really beneficial. Not only does it help reestablish the relationship, but also it helps you to walk less and them to walk more.
Yes. So yeah, that's right. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so what to incorporate when you're starting? So like we said before, keep it simple. Add an inner fence line to an existing paddock. That's fine. There's no problem with that. It's better to build an economical track than to not have a track at all. Work within your means. Add as you can. Grow with ease. If it's too complicated, it will be harder to maintain and you'll be less likely to stick with it. Temporary feed stations like this one down here, you can see there's just a bag tied there to a post. they help you to learn the land. So what we mean by that is maybe you put that hay station there and it works really great and the footing stays well. Or maybe you notice after a week of the bag being there that the footing is starting to get muddy even though you're picking your paddocks. And so then you think, okay, maybe that spot is too low for that. And so then you can move it and try a different spot. Jessica and I also really like to put mats under feeders, especially when you have sand as your footing, so that the horses aren't consuming that sand as they're eating the hay, because we know that we want most of that hay consumed with a lower headset. And so putting mats underneath those feeders can prevent that sand from getting mixed into your feeders. So we just wanted to thank you all very much for joining us. Again, we've got the coupon codes. We are going to send a follow-up email out with this, with the webinar. And so we'll have the coupon codes in there. For those of you who don't know, we are right here, actually in Tottenham, Ontario. We stock the entire line of Reva's Remedies. We do stock Mad Barn, Silver Lining Herbs, and we stock the Red Horse products as well. So things like your Artemud and your Honey Heal and your Soul Cleanse. If there's something you're looking for, just reach out to us. The Mad Barn is a little bit newer for us to carry, so we are starting to stock sort of on demand. So if you just let us know what you'd like, we'll make sure that we stock that for you and get that to you. And so yeah, we have lots of products there to help your horses heal and continue on their wellness journey. Okay, and exciting news?
Exciting news.
Okay.
Yes, if you hung in there to the end, you're awesome.
Thank you.
Natalie and I have worked tirelessly at developing an online course that shares our knowledge, information, and experience with the student, and it's called From Paddock to Paradise.
That's right.
So we're going to push play on a little promo video for you so you can check out how this course looks and what might find interesting about it.
Okay, here we go.
Natalie and I have big news to share. What have we been doing? We've been working tirelessly on a new online course called From Paddocks to Paradise, where we break down all of the steps needed and involved with developing your own track systems for yourself. We're so excited to share this information with you. This course is information packed, and you're going to be blown away at the value that you're getting.
And the insert slides nicely down once you've got it loose enough. Like that. And then you just tighten it, snug it up a little bit. Don't snug it up too much until you know where you want the line.
I typically bring my underground cable all the way up to the top so that in case you ever change your gate size later on, it's easier to A, maintain your track and harrow less often, and B, it's a safe place still for horses who are what you're going to get with this course is the breakdown in every step that you need to get it running at your facility. So you're going to get the planning and design, you're going to get layouts, you're going to get the how-tos, absolutely, the how-to videos. We have tons of how-to videos. Natalie's really good with a hammer. We also have many horses we bring in here who are recovering from conditions such as equine metabolic syndrome and laminitis, and how well they're doing once they get placed in the track systems. We've broken the course down into really simple chapters and lessons so that if you've never built a track before, or you've never even put up a paddock before, there's a lot of helpful tips, videos, and visuals to help you get on your way and to put this in on your own. If you already have a track system at home and you're just wondering what else can I do to create more enrichment for the horses, we also have chapters and lessons for you too. When you have the joiner, if you ever have a horse that unfortunately gets tangled up to the fence, maybe they roll into it, they haven't calculated the distance good enough, and they get caught up in it, those actually, if they're not over tightened, will let go. So this happens to be a low spot for us. We have our hay feeder built up on gravel platform, but then we also have a runoff drain set up for the horses to stay out of the muck as much as possible. It's a course. It's an online course about track systems. It's a one-of-a-kind online course, and you're going to learn how to build a better lifestyle for your horse that is within reach, easy to manage financially, as well as maintenance too. And maintenance. Really, this course teaches people how to run these things and how to work with track systems in a way that does not take so much time and energy. Absolutely. Healthier, better life for your horse. Cleaner life for your horse. Cleaner life for your horse. Just want this course to show you how much easier it can be to work with a track system to implement it. And you'll start to see the amount of improvement in your horse's health and well-being very quickly. It's so worth it. We want you to jump online to this online course, From Paddocks to Paradise. Click the link below to better your horse's life. See you there.
Thanks for hanging in there with us. So what we have for you today is a special coupon code, a discount code for 50% off of From Paddock to Paradise. So as we mentioned in the video, this online course is packed full of information to help you get started. It's meant to inspire you so that you can really grasp the concept of how to work with it within your means. So you can really, the sky is the limit with your creative inspiration for how to do it. So 50% off. The discount code is marked in that purple box, WJ202026, and it's going to be available to you starting this evening. And
It's
Natalie,
active now.
yeah, it's updated now. And Natalie and I are going to send out a follow-up email, and you're welcome to ask us any questions that you may have, and we will have those coupon codes for you in the email.
And also we do offer consultation services. So if you're thinking about putting in a track, or you're not sure how a track would work on your property, or you're working with a boarding facility and trying to figure out how to implement that, those are all things that we've navigated before. So we can certainly help you out there as well. So thank you. Thank you for your time. We loved having you here. A lot of you were black squares, but we still love having you here. So thank you for joining. And let's have a look and see if there's any questions, if I can find the question bubble. As far as track systems, with the land needed, really, if you have even half an acre, or there's even tracks that we know of that are like 0.3 and 0.4 of an acre, there's really creative ways that you can make that smaller space with more traction and maneuvering. So sometimes it means putting just a single fence line and then having available pathways on both sides, because it just breaks up that division. And so by adding even some details within that, so you've got small, like even a figure 8 type of loop, there's definitely a lot of ways that you can work with not having trees and in a smaller space. Certainly if you're trying to build something really economical and you've got trees, you can definitely just screw insulators right into those trees. That's something that we cover in the course. But if you have no trees, then you definitely want to purchase some type of man-made shelter. And you can certainly find those available as well, where they actually will just deliver something pre-made to you. When Jessica and I put man-made shelters in paddocks, we really like to have that fence line come across the backside, so that the horses can have access to both sides of the shelter itself. And then the snow then falls off outside of your track area, so you're not getting a buildup of snow that way.
The other thing that I'll bring up as well is to the question of how, like, what would be the minimum space needed. It's going to depend also on your size of herd and your size of horses within your herd.
Right.
And so you saw with our case studies that the majority of the horses were living on half an acre or less. And that's because when you have less horses or a smaller herd, 3 or 4 horses, if you have a 4-acre track, you're going to have so much maintenance involved with harrowing and keeping it up. It's almost easier to be strategic about your hay station placements and all of your stations, so that they're moving adequately within the space that you provide them, and they do a lot of the maintenance themselves.
Yeah.
It also depends on your land. We're really blessed to have sand here and a lot of dirt, but in clay atmospheres, which we go into the course as well on footing and how to deal with different footing in your living environment, but where there's more clay, you do want to have a little bit more distance on your track so that they are not continually tearing up a small space all of the time.
That's right.
And you can have rotation. We talked about pasture rotation, but you can rotate sections of your track as well. So we've done that in the past as well, where we have really bad ice in a section of the track. We can wire and fence off with temporary handles.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ways to make tracks work for you and be successful with the land that you do have.
That's right. And you did make a good point about ice. You will notice with track systems, sometimes you end up with a little bit more ice versus having a pasture, because with a pasture, they're not all traveling in the same pathway, right? Whereas with a track system, especially if you've got machinery in there doing manure pickup and hay delivery, that sort of thing, that track system takes a beating as far as compaction and whatnot. And then you end up with a little bit of a melt and some good wind, and you've got some ice on your hand. So you can use just a grass, just just sort of like a grass seed spreader if you want, to spread some salt and sand on there. I always say, if you're going to do salt, do sand too, because what happens with the salt is it will penetrate the ice, but then it will freeze over quite lovely and slickly with some wind. And so if you put the salt and then you put the sand and it's a combined amount of both, then the salt eats into the ice, the sand grabs on, and you end up with a better, safer surface area for your horses to walk on. I've also heard of people using the water from draining off of your beet pulp. Some people use shavings. Some people will spread some manure around on the track when it's still soft and a little bit pliable. Some people use HPB, like a limestone screening, that works really well too. So depending on what you have, I have verbal diarrhea about sharing things. So
Natalie likes
I
to
want to
share.
help everyone. So
She wants to help.
yeah. So depending on what you have, so there's a long answer for a short question.
That's okay. Type of fencing question.
Okay,
Because
Houdinis.
yeah,
Yes.
Houdinis. So we've got mixed fencing between wood and post, and we
right.
also have electric. There's much more cost-effective ways to do it. So within the course, we go through that. But with Houdinis, electric tends to be helpful, and
Okay,
it's
so
about your placement and height of your
It
wires.
is. So it's about your placement and your height, and it's also about your consistency and your voltage. So if you've got consistent electric fence, like powered up properly, you will have less chance of having Houdinis and escapees. Whereas if the voltage shifts back and forth, and if you're, let's say, running a solar or the power goes out, it doesn't take those horses long to figure out it's not working. So you really want to make sure that all of your connections are appropriately installed and you've got that fencing as strong as possible, and to make sure that the fencer that you're actually using is suitable for the amount of acreage that you're installing your fencing on. So the most times when you get Houdinis, it's because you have inconsistent power to your fencing, or it's just not strong enough and maybe it's grounding out somewhere. And sometimes it takes a bit of research and finesse to figure out where it's grounding out. But that's typically what you run into there.
When you have a mare group and a gelding group, they're better together, but not always safe. An older horse would not necessarily get enough hay. Any suggestions? Okay. So as far as getting enough hay goes, it veterinary wise, because we're not vets, so we can't speak to that, but making sure that their dental health is up to date and that parasites are in check and everything like that is good. It's really helpful to have a section of the track. We've got a rehab pen fenced into, but there's different sections in all of our tracks with a pen worked into, or a row barn stall worked into the track system, so that if there's horses who need extra food, more calories, they can be pulled aside daily to have access to that. And then they don't have to do the whole overnight in the stall part of life. They can just have those
Like a booster meal.
a booster meal, exactly. And Honey is well into her late 30s now, and so she comes in for her booster meals.
Yeah.
And she's quite happy to live out with the herd. As far as them getting along, we have mixed herds, and we also have a gelding herd. And the gelding herd has geldings who think they may not be geldings.
Yes.
And they've just thrived being a boy herd. But we also do have mares and geldings who get along really, really well together. So you just have to know your horses. And what we've found is that some horses who don't get along in one environment, like a smaller turnout paddock, get along much better in a track system, because, as we mentioned earlier, they're able to find distance between each other.
Yeah.
And that takes down, it's a lot of conflict resolution for them.
And sometimes it's even as simple as like adding that extra feed source, because oftentimes when you've only got one feed source or one shelter, like there is some guarding behavior that comes out, especially like if that feed source is so close to the shelter, then you end up with some guarding behaviors that come through. And so by adding all of these enrichments and all of these stations around your track, you really start catering to all of the needs within the herd. And then everyone starts to feel more at ease, because no one then is on edge or worried or concerned. And everyone's like, okay, we have everything we need. And you find that you just find more balance within the herd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there was a question about snow and maintenance with snow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it depends on how much snow. We like our horses to be horses. they deal with a lot more than we give them credit for, as far as what they can handle, but we want to make sure that it's safe. So Natalie spoke to with ice and how those conditions work. Last year, you were in there with the tractor blowing out 5 feet of
Yeah,
snow
so
that arrived in 24 hours.
yeah, it's true. So it depends on how much snow we get. So
Yeah.
at this point, we've gotten like little bits of snow here and there. The horses are packing it down. We end up with a bit of melt. The level comes down, we're good to go.
Yeah.
Last year, we ended up getting dumped on a couple places, which does happen in specific areas. We have gone in and blown out the tracks. And I will just add that the track that we showed with that mini horse, what we ended up doing on that track was we ran 4-strand electric so that in the summer, the 4-strand was good to keep the mini unable to get to that pasture. When we ran the 4-strand along the bottom, we had it separated with joiners. So if the snow got too heavy, because when you do 4 strands, that bottom strand's pretty low. So when the snow got too heavy, they could disconnect that bottom strand of electric and then have a hot 3-wire. And then come springtime, when that snow level came back down, they just reconnected that bottom strand and kept that mini out of that grass.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. So that's the versatility that comes with experience, because we've dealt with those issues when we were learning all of this as well. So there was a question about the recording. So we do have this recorded and we will make it available.
Yes.
It's going to be available.
With our little blips and all.
With all the blips. I don't know what that red line was.
I
But...
okay, and then the last question
feeding,
here.
feeding bowls.
What do you think?
So Natalie and I have a pretty good system now where for our track systems, we have row barns. So there's stalls outside and we also have a main barn with the main herd that comes up. So we do nutritional programs. Natalie does the nutritional programs here for all of our horses on site. And so each horse goes into a stall every day for their meal and they get their individual program and nutrition
in
plan.
Their spot. Yeah.
And they have nobody looking around for who's going to steal what bowl. We've done it the other way where we've done herd pecking order. And if that's what you have available to you, that's what you have. And that's fantastic.
People, yeah.
So for years before we had more horses on the property, when there was 8 or 9, it was manageable to put down the feed bowls and sort of babysit and watch. But it depends on the horses you have.
But I was going to say, even then, like originally, like when we were doing feed bowls, we were able to just sort of separate. So we had 3 on one side of the fence, 3 on the other side of the fence. And then we put like those guys ate at the same rate and they had the same amount of food. And so we kind of matched it that way. But also I do love bringing the horses in just to have their meal so that they have their safe space and they don't feel like anyone's going to rush them so that they can properly digest and that sort of thing. It also gives us a chance to get machinery in the paddock without having horses in the paddock, because I don't like machinery and horses together. I think horses should be out of the paddock when machinery is in there, keeps everyone safer. And then that way paddocks can get mucked, hay can get put out, all that sort of thing. Everyone is safe and then the horses can go. And it gives you a good chance to really look them over and make sure.
Oh yeah, to
check
do your once
in
over
and see how their 10th over, depending on how, you know.
Yeah. So that's it for the questions this evening. Okay. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate everybody who joined us. If you joined a little bit late, don't worry about it. We're going to make sure you have the recording and keep an eye out for our follow-up email. We'll make sure that you get those links and codes.
Yes, and we will say that if you have a friend who you think is who is interested in the track and whatnot, feel free to share the webinar with them, and certainly the coupon code as well, because we really want this information to get out there and become more of a standard for horses in our lives.
All right, everybody, have a great evening. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you everyone who joined and stayed, and thank you. Thank you very much.